Hi there guys, got a video here for you today on the FX Panthera, and in this one we're going to be solving a little problem I have with a rifle. So my problem is the hammer spring adjuster. This piece here has come loose. What's happened is that the locking screw, this one here, has backed itself out and allowed the hammer spring adjuster to pop out of place. We were shooting the rifle downrange and noticing that the accuracy was progressively getting worse and the feet per second spread was opening up. After a little more shooting, I tried to cock the rifle and it wouldn't cock. After a little bit of head scratching and a little bit of investigation, we noticed that the hammer spring adjuster had popped out the side of the action and the small securing screw had wedged itself within the action, and that little blockage was not allowing the rifle to cock. So we're going to be putting it back, and whilst the rifle is depressurized, I'm also going to be installing one of the FX digital gauges. The first thing we need to do is degas the rifle, and to do that we're just going to be removing the bottle. With that done, to make the rifle a little easier to handle, I'm also going to be removing the grip. Next, we need to remove the air inside the plenum. Now this is a little tricky to do as we can't actually cock the rifle without the hammer spring adjuster installed. So you see there the rifle won't cock. So what we need to do is temporarily install the hammer spring adjuster. To do that, we'll give the rifle a little shake and pull the trigger to get the hammer spring shuttle, this piece at the back here, aligned with the slot. Next, we'll take a small Allen key and get the slot in the side of the hammer spring shuttle to align with the slot, as you can see there. Next up, we'll take our hammer spring adjuster, drop that in place, and then whilst keeping a finger over the hammer spring adjuster, we'll cock the rifle, then fire it into a nice safe place. With that done, the regulator should let go and both gauges should read 0. Next, we can just hook the hammer spring adjuster out so it doesn't get lost. And then we can remove the back half of the rifle. To do that, we need to flip the rifle up and remove these 4 screws here using a 2mm Allen key. With that done, we need to remove the 4 screws, so 2 in this side, 2 in this side, to allow the butt piece to be removed from the main block. To do that, we'll be using a 3mm Allen key. Now with these 2 bottom screws, we need to remove them incrementally, so removing them both a little at a time. Also, as you undo the screws, just gently pull the butt piece back, and that will give you the clearance you need to remove the Allen bolts. And finally, as you take the butt piece off, just make sure this little O-ring here doesn't get lost. So there we have it. Just a quick explanation. So our bottle adapter goes here, the air is able to travel through this entire assembly, out of this hole here, and that hole there, seals onto the back of the block. So goes into this hole here and allows the air to pass through into the rest of the block. With that done, we can flip the block over and get our hammer spring adjuster installed into the side. To do that, we'll make sure our hammer spring shuttle is aligned properly. So R1 is. And then we can drop our hammer spring adjuster in there, making sure to align it with the slot. If your hammer spring adjuster doesn't go in or feels stiff, you may have to either back the hammer spring adjuster out or remove your power wheel. Next up, we'll take our locking screw and get that installed. So that goes in the back of the block. The rifle's so long that I've had to remove the shroud in order to get you a better shot of the back of the action, but hopefully the camera will pick it up. There's a small hole on this side of the hammer spring shuttle which the locking screw needs to be fitted into. Getting that done up nice and tightly with a 1.5mm Allen key. Now obviously this is a fairly small grub screw and it does go into a deep hole, so you don't need to do it up gorilla tight, but it does need to be done up tight enough so that it doesn't come loose. With that done, we can make sure that the rifle cocks and fires as it should, which it seems to. So the next thing we're going to do is remove the gauge and fit our nougat one. With the gauge cover removed, I'm just going to use an adjustable spanner to loosen off the gauge, being nice and careful not to slip. And then we can just go ahead and install our digital one in its place. Now the gauge seals on an X-ring in the base of the hole there, so the gauges don't need to be done up real tight in order to seal properly. And then once it's done in, we'll make sure that the gauge is aligned nice and upright. So this one looks about right there to my eye. The next thing we'll do is get everything put back together. So to begin with, we'll put the butt piece back on. And to start, we'll just drop the screws into the holes. Then we can add a small amount of silicone grease to the O-ring on the front there. And then we can install the butt piece. Again, doing the two bottom ones in incrementally and allowing them to pull the butt piece into position. We're not going to be doing those up tight just yet. We're going to be doing these ones in the top up first and then tightening them all down at the same time. And whilst making sure everything's aligned and the gap is not offset to one side at any time, we'll do them up nice and tightly. With that done, we'll get the two plastic covers installed. Now these are only plastic, so you don't need to do them up mega tight as they will probably break. And the last thing I'll do is just reinstall the grip and the shroud. You don't need to take the shroud off, I only took it off just so I could get a better angle at the back of the block for the camera. But with that done, we'll get the shroud installed. And with that installed, the rifle's ready to be gassed up. As you can see there, both the gauges on the side of the rifle is working, and our reg is set to about 80 bar. Right then, so that's everything installed and everything fixed, hopefully. What we'll do now is just put the rifle over the chronograph, make sure it's chronoing fairly consistently, and then I'll take it down range and make sure everything's working as it should. Right then, so we've tested the rifle over the weekend and I'm really quite happy with the results. Now I will say before I show you the results that I went over the entire rifle checking all the bolts on it and making sure they were all tight, and quite surprisingly a few of them were loose. So all of the ones that hold this front section on and this bracket at the front here were loose, as were a couple of the ones that hold the pellet probe and the cocking arm in place. Now they weren't loose enough to start falling out, but they didn't need any real effort to remove them. So I went round, tightened them all up, and I'm really quite happy with it. And I'm really quite happy with how the rifle shot over the weekend. And here are some of the range results. So this top row here is my zeroing groups, and then the rest of them were with two different sets of pellets. The ones here, these ones here, were done using JSB Express pellets, and the ones down the bottom here were done using JSB Shorts. But as you can see there, some nice tight groupings. Most are under a 5p piece. For those outside the UK, a 5p piece is 18mm in diameter. So to get under that, the group needs to be about 13.5mm centre to centre. But as you can see, some real nice tight groups. I still do think we have a mag issue. In my opinion, the magazine is oversprung and it's giving us a few flyers. And sometimes when you push the bolt forward, you can feel the pellet is a little notchy going through the magazine. So that's something I'll definitely look into in the future. But I'm quite happy with how the rifle's shooting now. This is obviously still with our HFT 500 barrel. The standard liner was better after we retested it, but it's still nowhere near as good as this. All of these groups here are 5-shot groups done at 50 yards. And this rifle is obviously a sub 12 one. If we look here, we've got a real nice tight group at the front there. Probably a 7mm edge to edge. Was luck obviously, there are quite a few that are not quite that tight, but a 7mm edge to edge group is really quite impressive. With that all said and done guys, that's pretty much going to do it for this video, so thanks for watching and we'll see you in the next one.